How is your season starting off?
It's really just starting very slowly. I think we're only in the second week of training. I don't know.
If I can ask what the conditions are like where you are, because in France we're having a big cold snap. For us,
It's a big heat wave. But right now, it's raining a lot. We're in the middle of the rainy season. It hasn't stopped for a few days now.
what is it? Are you training indoors?
When I work during my lunch break, I've been using a home trainer since this year. In previous years, I didn't have a home trainer, I did everything outside. And now I'm going to change my training routine a bit this year because I'll have less time for myself. So I'm going to incorporate the home trainer during my lunch break. And when it rains during the day, I still go out. That doesn't stop me. We
You will definitely see a change because as soon as you add indoor sessions with different platforms, since you have several, you'll notice a difference. You'll immediately see the difference, especially with the training and working on your wattage. You make progress, that's for sure. It also gives you a much better, more comprehensive understanding of your specific wattage output in particular. So because of this, you're definitely going to improve your performance for sure.
Up until now, I was training without a power meter, and I invested in one even on my bike about 4 or 5 months ago. So it's really brand new. Before that, it was all based on feel and heart rate, cadence meter. So now, yes, this is going to be a game changer for training this year.
You are really going to see your incredible progress, and that is truly cool. There were approximately 50 enthusiastic people who showed up for this very first educational webinar of the new season. Goodbye. With him talking about, we're not going to talk about sleep, we're going to talk about how to make sure the night goes well during an ultra. So listen, we'll be able to get this started in a few seconds. It's 6:29 p.m. And please keep in mind that this very first introductory webinar will also be fully recorded, subsequently shared on our official YouTube media platform, and additionally released as an informative podcast episode very soon after we conclude. So, if you find that you cannot listen to this full and detailed discussion in its entirety today, which should last for about 30 minutes, please know that the complete recording will be made available for streaming or download on various other platforms shortly after we conclude. In any case, feel free to ask us questions on the Discord screen. At the very top on the right, you have a small message bubble. Don't hesitate to ask a few questions. We will enter into the discussion with Lee, and then we will respond. Some of your questions, I have the thread right in front of me, and I can ask Lily questions directly. So there you have it. So why did we choose Lily to answer these first questions about the night and how to make sure your first night in ultra endurance goes well? Well, we know Lily well. She's the ambassador for Rest en Cerizay. She has participated in 2 starts and has been a finisher once. That's experience. I remember very well the start at Anglet with an exceptional sunset, and in the end that time it just didn't work out. But then she broke the spell this year in 2025 by making it to the end of her adventure. So for the whole team, it seemed interesting for Lily to speak up and share her experience, her emotions, and how she lived through it before we get started. And that's probably a habit I have on the podcast. Maybe it's Lee. By the way, I invite you to listen to the episode I recorded with Lee on Ultra Talk where she tells us about her journey. But maybe for those who don't know you, Lee, could you introduce yourself in a few words, tell us where you live, and share your experience and your relationship with ultra distance?
So, Lee, I'm 45 years old and I'm a mother of 2 children. I've been living in Réunion for 18 years. I left mainland France 20 years ago. That's it. Cycling, I actually discovered it quite late since I started cycling 3 years ago. And since I don't know how to do things halfway, I immediately jumped into ultra distance. I had actually listened to a podcast. It was a conversation you had with a woman from Réunion who had done the 2,500 a few years ago. And when I heard it, when I listened to the end of that podcast, I thought to myself, this is exactly what I want to do. So 18 months after I started cycling, I took on the race across France 1,000 kilometers.
Exactly. I remember that conversation. That's how I started following you on social media. And I thought to myself, what boldness to be able to take on such a distance like that without having crazy experience. A lot of participants think it over and spend months and months before taking the plunge. So yeah, I thought it was really daring and I absolutely wanted to put you in the spotlight. But before you tell us about your experience, your feelings, what you did well, and also the mistakes you might have made during your first experiences at night, I'd like us to talk just about the pre-night phase, that period when you know you're about to head into the night. So for you, what are the messages, or at least what are your routines, your processes that you put in place, right, when you know you're about to enter the night? So just before you go into the night, before there's that tipping point where you're in the silence, you see the whole environment, but the pre-night, how does that go for you? What do you pay attention to?
Before setting off, you mean?
No, I mean, once we've really set off. And it's true that the start of the 1000 is just in the evening, so you head straight into the night. Even when you're in the adventure after 24 or 48 hours, you know you're going into the night, you're moving forward in the night, you've decided whether to stop or not. But in any case, that's how it is. Did you yourself put in place any processes, a routine that gets you through the night, or do you just go with your gut feeling?
Well, what's funny is that I'm always someone who I overthink a lot, but what I really love about Ultra is that my mind stops overthinking. I'm truly in the present moment. And it's true that I don't think about the night that's coming. Actually, I let the night come to me and I let the feelings come and I handle things in the present moment, really. So when night falls, it's true that the anxiety comes little by little, gradually. It's not sudden like that. It's not abrupt. Fortunately, night falls gently, so you can actually prepare for it. And that's it. I go step by step, one foot in front of the other, really.
It's interesting because we all approach and experience the night differently. For you, so we'll talk about food later because there's definitely something to discuss when you go into the night regarding food, since you can't find at 3 a.m. the little corner shop that's open. So there are still things you have to think about when you're heading into the night, but we'll talk about that. Food a bit later. And how do you experience that turning point, meaning the moment when the sun has set? You know that once the sun has set, you still have a little bit of light left, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And then at some point you make a turn, go over a hill, or come out of a forest, and suddenly it's night. How do you experience that? There can be several kinds of nights. You're out at night under a beautiful full moon, and that's really an amazing feeling. Incredible. And then you're out at night with wind, and the road surface isn't great. It's not the same experience. How do you experience that tipping point when you enter the night?
It's a bit complicated to answer that because there are so many different scenarios. There was the first raid, there was the second raid, there were the night training sessions in Réunion. There were lots of different scenarios, and I didn't experience them in the same way at all. There were my training sessions in Réunion where I rode at night. There was one time when I was riding and had a terrible headwind. And what was terrible wasn't necessarily riding slower because of the headwind, but the fact that I couldn't hear anything anymore. I couldn't stay alert anymore. I couldn't hear if a car was coming or if there was a person or an animal. I was really... Thank you. That was the anxiety I felt. I had the impression of being trapped in that noise, and all I wanted was to turn around so I could have the wind at my back and get my hearing back. So there was that anxiety, and there was also the first raid. Actually, I was very, very scared during the first raid. Every night, I was afraid every night, but it took that raid for me to stop being afraid. In fact, I wasn't afraid during the second raid. And
when you say fear, Lee, you mean real fear. About what? Because that's something that comes up often. Later, I'll give you an example of a female cyclist who was just like you until that moment, the moment that changes everything. But for you, what was it? Your anxieties? What was it? Your fears?
I think it's the fact of being a woman. I feel vulnerable. It's being a woman, the fear of having a bad encounter. Breaking down on the side of the road and maybe coming face to face with someone with bad intentions. That's the fear. Then there's also the fear of animals. In Réunion, I have to deal with that. There are a lot of stray dogs, so we often get attacked and chased. But yes, it's the fear of a bad encounter that scares me. That's it.
That's interesting what you're saying, because we've had similar comments from women where indeed the biggest fear was at night. I even remember perfectly well a piece of feedback from a woman who told us that actually the GPS tracking, it's great, but as a woman, I think at night it can actually be a disadvantage for someone to know exactly where I am. So we completely understood that. What we do today at PGO is that if a woman calls us saying, I don't feel safe, we have the option to notify the runner who is ahead or behind. Either stop, or you're about to reach a spot where there's a woman who doesn't feel safe. Could you accompany her during the night? That's something we don't rule out for safety reasons. To tell women who don't feel safe, specifically in certain secure spots, we allow at that moment for this woman to join a group or for a group of men to accompany her during the night to ensure her safety as she continues. So that's absolutely possible. What you're saying is very interesting.
It's true, I hadn't thought about the fact that we had the tracker and that a lot of people have our route. Actually, I had never thought about that.
That's the feedback from a woman like you who only went out at night for that very reason.
You shouldn't have told me that, because now that I know,
For that very reason. But that's exactly the role of the PGO, meaning that we have visibility over the race and you might think you're alone, but maybe behind you there's someone 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers away. And maybe in front of you, there's someone 1.5 kilometers ahead. That's often the case, actually. And 1.5 kilometers in an ultra, that represents quite a few minutes. You feel like you're alone because you can't see. There aren't any 4-kilometer straightaways, so you don't see the person in front of or behind you. We have that visibility, and it's happened that for safety reasons, we've told runners ahead or behind that it's okay for them to group together for safety reasons. So that's not a problem. We know how to handle that. And the example I gave you about the night, that brings me to the next question. It's about you. When you go into the night, before entering the night, did you decide whether to sleep, to stop or not? And there, you're living in the moment. And if you don't feel like sleeping, you don't sleep. Or if you do feel like sleeping, you stop. But did you actually put your sleep strategy in place? And that brings me to an example of Camille Albissier, who ever since she started doing ultras has come to our races. Performing has always been her thing. She's always been chasing performance. Camille, and at the beginning we used to talk with her. We would ask her, are you prepared? Do you plan on sleeping? And actually Camille was afraid of the night. She didn't know how to sleep outside. And her strategy was basically to say, actually, I don't stop to sleep because I don't know how to sleep. I don't know how to bivouac, so I just don't stop. And up until a certain point when she realized, especially after we introduced the sleep rule, the rule, 4 hours every 36 hours in place, that's when she told herself, I need to learn. And actually, that completely broke down her barriers about being able to sleep while backpacking, which is what she does now. I thought that was a good example. And you, how do you do it? When you go into the night, do you already have your sleep strategy in place or not at all?
so for me, I plan ahead. The first night I always pull an all-nighter. I find that this first night is less stressful because in the end, we set off every 30 seconds and honestly, we're not really alone. During the night, we know there are people ahead, we know there are people behind.
At the start of the 1,000 kilometer, which is in the evening with a departure every 30 seconds, it's true that almost all night long, you'll see little lights ahead of you and little lights behind you.
That's right. And then there's the excitement of the start. The first night, I don't feel any fear. It's the following nights, because by then, of course, we've put some distance between ourselves and the other participants. And the first year, I found myself in a pitch-black forest, no moon, with the sounds of branches cracking. So your imagination starts to do its thing. And what I did then was call my sister. I called my sister, and I think she stayed on the phone with me for 3 hours. I
Put her on speakerphone. A lot of people do that. It's true that at night, a little tip, and I'll mention it since quite a few people have joined since then, is also why we made it mandatory in the rules. The whistle. It's partly for the animals at night. So the whistle shouldn't be buried at the bottom of your bag, but really within reach of your mouth, I would say. That means you need to whistle regularly to scare away animals because nighttime is risky. It's still important to avoid collisions with animals. So there's also the strategy. Many cyclists, ultra cyclists at night, sing, first to help fight off sleep a bit more, and second, to scare the animals a little, and then to protect yourself a bit from certain things. As you said, your imagination starts running wild, and sometimes you hear creaking noises, that sort of thing. Have you ever, during the night, experienced symptoms that made you say, I'm tired, I need to stop? Because it's true that we have. We've had long discussions with Remy Audiel, who, by the way, will be on one of these webinars in a few weeks. And it's true, he told us, it's between 2 and 5 in the morning when the risk of falling asleep, or at least really, that's when the big waves of sleepiness can hit. Have you ever had any warning signs like auditory or visual hallucinations that made you say, okay, we need to stop immediately?
I did have hallucinations once. It was the very first night of my first RAF. After a sleepless night, I was seeing banana-shaped handbags in the middle of the road. I have no idea why, I really don't know.
It's the mind, you know. Sometimes on the road, they put what looks a bit like patches on the road with tar, and it's true, it creates shapes. I've been fooled by that before myself. Those shapes turned into faces. It's
That right there is absolutely incredible.
And how did you react?
I laughed because even though I was hallucinating, I realized it wasn't real. I told myself it couldn't be possible because you're starting to lose it, you need to take a break. But I didn't feel tired, which is strange because it was still pretty cool in the Pyrenees. I felt awake. I wasn't nodding off or anything, but I did have hallucinations. Still, I stopped afterwards, took a short break, slept for 5 to 10 minutes, and then set off again.
It's true that 5 to 10 minutes might seem very short, but at the same time, it can allow your brain to do a little reset and give you a few extra hours, whether to get you through the night, get you to your motel, or get you to a life base. That's also why we made a mattress mandatory. It's really for that kind of stop. A bit of an emergency so you're not stuck in the damp.
That's right, but for me, apart from the BV, I had nothing. So that's why I didn't sleep more than that, because I didn't have the gear to sleep outside, because it's a choice not to sleep outside. I don't feel safe doing it. When you say we get waves of fatigue between 2 and 5, actually, I sleep between 2 and 5. Usually, I even sleep between 2 and 6. I was part of the sleep study last year with Remy, and so he actually gave us a debrief about that, telling us that the best hours for sleeping were those ones. So I followed his advice. It's true that
And so it follows that
it helped me.
it's the circadian rhythm, meaning our habits. We all have our own internal processes. We go to bed at the same time. We wake up at almost the same time. So that creates routines. And generally, we sleep. For the most part, I think that everyone who is online between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., so from 2 to 5:30 a.m., it shows that this is when our body, at least, is used to sleeping. And so Remy's recommendation to say, if you're going to take your sleep break, do it during that window between 2 and 5 a.m.
Yes.
And that's completely legitimate and indeed sleeping outside. Many people like you don't dare to or don't feel comfortable or prefer to either stay at a base camp or book a spot along the road precisely to be sheltered. And how do you manage? I'm talking about being sheltered, but how do you manage yourself the night when it comes to the cold and humidity? Do you tend to feel more uncomfortable? At night, how do you handle the night in terms of humidity and cold? Because as we know, it's much colder between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. than it is between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m.
So there were the big races in France, but there was also a small ultra race I did here at night. I had more trouble here in Réunion than on the mainland. But the problem is that with fatigue, for me, it's harder to regulate my body temperature. Also, it's true that if you go over a mountain pass, you'll get hot. Then when you go back down, you'll get cold. So at night when I'm riding, I try to stop as little as possible. Because when you're standing still, you're more vulnerable. I want to be moving all the time. So what I do, and what Cyclit gave us last year, is this little musette bag, which for me was a game changer during the race. It really, oh yeah, whether it's during the day to put my snacks in,
That little musette was an incredible success.
absolutely. And at night, actually, what I did was before nightfall, I would put everything I needed to stay warm into that musette to get through the night. Gloves, over gloves, rain jacket, base layer. And actually, during the night, I would stop for 2 minutes, either to take off the rain jacket or the down jacket, because I was climbing a pass. And actually, I barely stopped at all as a result. You had everything.
Within reach.
Yeah, because the problem with staying warm is that you sweat a lot, and then on the way down, you get cold. So yes, you lose a bit of time getting dressed and undressed, but I still think it's better to be comfortable temperature-wise.
It's true that at night, too, as we were just talking about, you also have the fatigue. With fatigue, you feel it. You're a bit more vulnerable to the cold, definitely when you're tired. You see a lot of ultra distance cyclists at the rest stops or at the finish line. It's 25 degrees and they're dressed as if it were 5 degrees. You're talking about thermoregulation. I think that indeed over time you lose your sense of temperature. And you think, since it's nighttime, it must be -10, so you put on all your layers. And we see a lot of runners coming out of the night, usually arriving, let's say before 11 a.m., at Mondelieu or at the life bases along the route. There's actually no connection between the clothes they're wearing and the time they're passing through. You see what I mean? It doesn't make sense, really. There's this kind of imbalance. Maybe that really is related to thermoregulation. So you were just explaining that little... Yes, go ahead. I'll let you speak.
Yes, I was saying yes, in Réunion, when I did that night race, it was unbearable. I kept stopping all the time. I was hot, I was cold, I was hot again. I went from 2,000 meters altitude down to sea level, but on that route, I just kept stopping to take off a layer, then take off another layer. And sometimes you put a little layer back on. I couldn't take it anymore. It was a nightmare. But I just couldn't regulate my body temperature at all.
That's a key skill. to stop and do as much as possible when you stop, rather than making lots and lots of little stops. Plus,
I've always been taught
you lose a huge amount of
time. Exactly. So there's a trick. I've always been told when you stop, do three things. You never stop for just one reason. When you stop, it's to change, use the restroom, or eat. Optimize your time.
Exactly.
But in this particular descent, I really wasn't able to optimize at all because I just couldn't find the right clothes to feel comfortable.
That's experience. In any case, your musette trick is really, really interesting. I think a lot of people are going to adopt it. Whereas I thought the musette was going to be used for food at night, actually. That's what I was telling you right at the beginning. At the very beginning, it's when you head into the night. And the advice I usually give is between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. You know you're about to head into the night and you mustn't miss the last little convenience store. You mustn't miss the gas station or the last convenience store that will let you go into the night with enough calories. Because we see it happen often. People who miss that last opportunity, the night becomes difficult because you're low on calories, you lose your bearings, you're tired. To fight fatigue, you need calories, you need sugar, and generally it gets pretty tough. How do you handle it? That window between 5 and 8 p.m.?
So first of all, for dinner this year, unlike last year, I stopped at a restaurant every night. So I had a real meal that kept me going for a good part of the evening. On top of that, my issue is that I have a lot of food intolerances and allergies. So I bring a lot of food with me because I can't always find what I need. I can't just stop at a bakery. At gas stations, there's not much I can eat. So for me, it's basically restaurants and supermarkets. So usually I have extra weight because of the food.
I have a lot of supplies. And that's what allows you to get through the night because, as ultra cyclists, with the fatigue that breaks down a lot of filters, your mind tends to wander a lot. You overthink a lot, you calculate, recalculate, imagine scenarios, the logistics. I'll arrive at this time, I'll leave at that time. Will it be open? Will it be closed? Having a good supply of calories with you also helps you not to overthink. So it's also a very good strategy for getting through the night.
No, I've never had any issues with that. I've always had enough food with me. I started out with a lot, so I don't use gels but fruit jellies instead. Fruit jellies from Decat. I set off with 25 fruit jellies. I still have some at the life base in the drop bag. And then I also take hard-boiled eggs and sandwiches, and I make myself some energy balls too. I make things myself, things I prepare on my own, and I put those in the drop bag as well. Packets of rice. The kind you can heat up or just eat cold like that. So I have quite a few things like gluten-free biscuits. So yeah, I set off with quite a lot of stuff.
Very interesting. In any case, that's the builder.
And I stop at the Super Aid stations to top things up. At the Super Aid stations, I buy canned food like canned tuna. It's strange this year, I really felt like eating fatty foods. I ate cod liver, lots of fruit. So yeah, I put all that in my musette bag during the day actually. Actually, what I would do is stop at a supermarket and buy all the food I needed for the whole day.
That way, it's like you were saying earlier, you optimize your stops. You optimize your stops. It's a real skill because you lose a huge amount of time by making too many stops. It's a real skill. So it's true that we can see in the comments, the little musette you mentioned is a real hit. We have comments, especially from Mark, who says this musette is incredible. It's true that when we received it and unpacked it, we already knew it was going to be a big hit with the participants. We were even asked on S-Cross Quebec if we could bring a few of the remaining ones. That I understand, but we also have another comment. Someone told us, and we're seeing this more and more, that there are more and more ultra-distance cycling trailers showing up, and they come with their own gear. And so this trail bag is also a really good way to slip a bit of food into the different pockets. And to be able to spend the night in a fairly... Yes.
I've seen that a lot of people do that, but personally, I don't like carrying any weight. Even in the small pockets of my jersey, I don't put anything. I don't want to have anything on my back on me. It's not about the weight.
What you're saying, Lisa, is that the weight should be in your bike bags, but not on you, not on your body. Yes?
Not on me. No, I don't like it. I already can't stand the jersey, the feeling of being squeezed, and the bib shorts are tight too. I do everything I can to... Nothing on me, yes?
Interesting. No, but it's good that you're sharing this with us. And then we move forward into the night. Ollie, has it ever happened to you at night to have really tough moments, like a big drop in morale because of fatigue, because of the night, the fact that you don't have any visual cues? Have you ever had really tough moments, feeling down, and how do you deal with it? Do you listen to music? Do you call a friend? How do you fight against that?
So first, let me just tell you something real quick. Maybe my screen will turn off in 5 minutes because I set something up. At 10 p.m., my phone shuts off. And here in Réunion, it's 9:55 p.m. So I don't know how to do this online. So you're going to lose me for a minute.
We'll find some solutions.
The first year, like I told you, when I was feeling down, I would call my sister at night. She was really, really there for me. She would listen to me talk. We talked about everything and nothing, but at least I could hear a voice and I felt like I wasn't alone. This year, I haven't had any rough patches because I was really confident in myself this year. I didn't experience the race at all like I did last year. Last year, I endured it. This time, I really enjoyed it, like it was an adventure. I wasn't focused on performance, on getting a certain time or anything like that. It was honestly awesome. This year, it was really awesome. There was a moment.
Let me just interrupt you for a second, then I'll give you the floor again. There was a moment, and I think that's the key. If you're preparing your adventure the way you did it, meaning you put zero pressure on yourself about the competition, you told yourself, okay, I'm going to do this many kilometers per day. I'll stop, I'll sleep, I'll start again. And with these strategies, I greatly increase my chances of finishing. And you told me that at the beginning, and indeed when you arrived, you told me I followed the plan. I loved it. It's magnificent. I didn't win, but I loved it. It was
Stop.
And I found that this strategy was totally in line with the spirit. Cross-network.
But seriously, and even at the end, I could have arrived in the night to do 4 days. And then my friend Elsa said to me, honestly, are you sure you want to arrive at night? There won't be any atmosphere, you'll be all alone. She said to me, come on, sleep one more night, then arrive tomorrow morning. You'll see, there will be a great atmosphere. And it's true, since I wasn't at all focused on setting a time, I listened to her, I spent one last night, and then I arrived in the morning. And it was amazing because there were lots of people and the weather was beautiful. I love my adventure from start to finish because I had prepared it with my coach. We had decided that it would be an adventure. And the main goal was for me to finish it. Because last year I caught whooping cough and had to drop out at 900 kilometers. Yes,
Please keep this in mind.
And I had suffered. So we were really relieved. Yes, so this year I had a bit of a rough patch. And it was very surprising. So I talked about it with Remy, the sleep specialist, because I had slept for 4 hours, I think. I had gotten up at 5 a.m. So it was still dark, but the sun was starting to rise. I had slept really well. I felt good when I woke up, so I started riding, I don't know, for about half an hour. And then I started to really feel a slump, but not mentally, because my spirits were high from start to finish during the race, but I had a wave of fatigue. I started nodding off, so I began slapping my cheeks. I was telling myself, this isn't normal. I slept, I ate well, I had carbs, but I was still nodding off. So I put in my earphones, turned the music up loud, and actually, I fell asleep on the bike. Literally, I should have stopped, but I kept going. Actually, my brain couldn't understand because I was telling myself, I rested, I ate, I shouldn't be tired, I shouldn't be nodding off, and yet I ended up falling asleep. I was going downhill, and actually, luckily I had bought those headphones specifically for the race. They fell, got caught in my front wheel, and the clanging sound woke me up.
With those
deeply paradoxical and contradictory moments in time.
You're making a physical effort and yet your body falls asleep. It's true that it's completely paradoxical, but it really does happen.
So I talked about it with Remy and he explained to me, he said, yes, we don't really understand it, but there's this time at sunrise, whether you've slept or not, there's an effect on our body that causes this sudden wave of fatigue. It's like when you eat something at noon, people say you feel tired afterwards because of digestion, but no, it's circadian. And he explained to me that despite all the studies they do on sleep, they still don't understand why. At sunrise...
Actually, I'm going to go even further. I'm going to go even further and share with you an experience we have at the operational management post. The microphone cut out in the meantime. So I don't know if it's related to what you were saying, Lee. Yes, your microphone cut out. There you go. It's good now. And actually, we noticed that at the operational management post, where we monitor all the runners between 7 and 10 in the morning, we have, and this ties in with what Remy was saying, we have a number of calls from participants who are heading in the opposite direction. They stop at the bakery and then head back the way they came. We get an incredible number of calls asking, am I on the right route? We get so many calls between 7 and 10 in the morning, I would almost say it makes no sense.
And
Remy, who is at the PGO, usually with us in Mondelieu, every time, I'm not going to say we laugh about it, but every time we know. That's why we try to stay really focused and reinforce the teams at that time. Between 7 and 10 in the morning, people on the road behave in a way that's linked to the sunrise, which is different from the rest of the day. And so we notice a lot of GPS errors. I messed up, even though nowadays GPS devices usually alert you when you make a mistake. It warns you of a wrong turn, but people keep going. We end up calling them kilometers later. See?
Really, same here.
Not on the right road. So that matches what we say. Sunrise is always a pretty special moment, and you have to try to stay alert.
Absolutely, absolutely. And luckily those headphones got caught in the front wheel, because otherwise I would have gone off the road. You
really have to try to pay attention to those signals that tell you, okay, here there's an emergency. So it's true that you've given us lots of valuable advice, that this conversation was recorded and will be shared on YouTube, but also as a podcast on Neutralto. If you have any questions, I invite you to ask them now. What advice is related to this? We're coming to the end of this conversation. This could go on for hours, but I invite you to listen to it again and to ask us questions directly, either on the SEO Cross series or directly to Ali. But what advice could you give to those listening to us who in 2026 will be experiencing their first time riding at night? Whether it's the 200 kilometers, which is exclusively at night, with a start at 8 p.m. and a maximum of 12 hours to complete the 200 kilometers. Or the 300 kilometers, even though it starts at 8 a.m., some will end up riding into the night and finishing at night. The 500 is 48 hours. What advice would you give to people who are going to experience their first night ride?
I think, first of all, you need to prepare ahead of time. Do some night training rides, maybe start out in a group with some friends, and then after that, go out alone, do short distances on routes, to get used to riding at night, because your perception is completely different. In terms of your vision, you can't see as well. And in terms of sound, your senses are actually heightened. So yeah, training ahead of time to get ready is important. And then to tame your fear. I think you can also prepare yourself mentally by carefully trying to identify your specific fears, imagining the various scenarios that scare you the most, and thinking deeply about how you might effectively handle those difficult situations. And then maybe try, after having done all of that. So I know I never go out without it, but this year I found a strobe flashlight. They're blinding flashlights. I used it on stray dogs that were attacking me, chasing me. It worked really well. It worked. So there you go. There are also little tools like that you can use to defend yourself, to protect yourself.
That's interesting what you're saying. Is it a flashlight that's permanently attached to the bike and you activate it by pressing a button, or is it something you keep within reach?
No, it's within reach. It's in the pocket of my raincoat at night. Yes, so actually that's it. I have a ton of flashlights. I'm not light on that. I have my fixed light on the handlebars with 2000 lumens. I've got my headlamp too. And I have this extra flashlight that lights up just as well, I think. 2000 lumens, and it has this strobe function, which is really very blinding. It blinds someone or an animal. It works really well for that.
That's a really good tip you're sharing there.
I also have something, but I'm not going to promote it because it's not exactly legal. I've got a self-defense spray with me. That
we can understand.
But it's not legal. Actually, you're allowed to have one at home, but you're not supposed to carry it around with you normally. But I take the risk anyway. I've got one with
me. And it's true. You were talking about lighting. So we're talking about nighttime. I think that's also one of the topics that can make your nighttime cycling experience a good one. It's the ability to light up the
headlamp
or the light attached to the bike, but where to put the lights, because for me it's the same when I go for this kind of night ride. I like to have several lights so I can actually see clearly. I really need to see clearly. So I'll share. Those who listen to the podcast already know this, but I have an inner ear problem, and riding at night, it completely throws off my inner ear balance. After 2 or 3 hours, I actually get nauseous and feel as sick as people who get off a ride at a fair. Well, for me, it causes exactly the same symptoms. So vomiting, loss of balance. The only solution I found is to have lights that illuminate comfortably. If my field of vision isn't comfortably lit, I really have to strain my eyes to see the road. In that case, it's going to be a disastrous experience and I'll get sick. So if you
have any other, I find that having light also makes you less afraid. And having a headlamp, because the fixed light on the handlebars, you can only see in front of you, but with a headlamp, if you hear a noise to the side, you can turn and look. That's it. Having a headlamp, I think that's even better.
Ultra distance events, I just don't see how you can have an ultra experience without a headlamp. Because, as you said, if you get a flat tire or even just have a mechanical problem and you don't have a headlamp, that's also why we require multiple lights in the mandatory regulations. But if you don't have a headlamp, How are you supposed to make repairs at 3 a.m. when you're not on a well-lit road and you're in a forest where it's really dark? The headlamp will let you see. Wherever you look, it's simple for those listening to us. A first experience, the headlamp lights up wherever you look. So if you look to grab your water bottle, you'll be able to see how to grab it properly and not snag a bag, spill and lose your bottle. So that's clear. But lighting is really, for one, your safety and
your well-being are
crucial factors. It's essential. Do you have any final
little tip to share? Yes, because I see on the forum there's a tip. No, but I think you really have to be methodical, actually. Before heading into the night, you need to, for me, because I'm pretty organized. So I would say it's about getting organized, taking the gear you need, putting it in your bag or on top of your pack so you don't end up stuck in one place. Isolated and immobile. The whistle, the headlamps, make sure they're charged, even if it means carrying several. It's okay to be a bit heavier, but it's important to have multiple lamps. Keep your phone close with the control center's number saved as a favorite, so you don't have to search through your contacts. And what else? Right, and my strobe lamps. Those are good habits. Yeah, exactly. Don't waste time just standing still. Personally, I think that's it. You always have to keep moving. At night.
So if I sum up what you're saying, Lisa, to have a good night during an ultra-distance ride, you need to prepare for the night. That means before heading into the night, check your setup on your bike closely, where your things are, where your food is. But first get yourself settled so you feel calm and don't have too many questions on your mind. And also have a good...
It is important to travel light. You really do not want to find yourself alone at night, not knowing exactly where you're going to sleep. Personally, I usually find my own overnight accommodation right around 6 p.m. in the evening. That's actually the question I was going to ask you. The number of kilometers, around 6 p.m. Actually, I stop to eat around 7 p.m. I stop to eat, and while I'm eating, I look for my accommodation.
For a stop that's going to happen around what time? 2 in the morning? That's about right.
Then I have to check with the person if they're okay with it. So either there are those key boxes where you can come in whenever you want. I once ended up going to someone's place who didn't have that, and he waited for me until 1 in the morning. And on top of that, you always end up meeting wonderful people when you explain what you're doing. They wait for you with tea, they've prepared a little snack for you. I had told them I had allergies, and they made me eggs, just so kind, really. So yes, planning ahead. While I'm eating my dinner, which is the only real meal I have all day, you with your steak, something really fatty, full of protein. That's when I take the time to find a place to stay for the night.
So it's true.
Sometimes I arrive very late.
You're very organized in your... Yeah, I'm not that organized either. In your preparation. So I have a question here from Mark who asks, at night, do you favor carbs or fats?
Well, every 4 hours, I eat something solid, real food. So at the start of the race, when I have eggs, I eat hard-boiled eggs. Otherwise, I make myself little sandwiches. I buy them at the supermarket. I make myself sandwiches or sometimes have tuna. That's it. I eat solid things, real food. Every 4 hours, and in between those 4 hours, I eat fruit jellies or energy balls, and I even have my isotonic drink as well.
Very interesting.
Actually, the first year I didn't eat very well and I was eating way too many carbs, and I ended up feeling completely sickened. And I couldn't eat for 24 hours. And at that point, I was weak. So after that, I completely changed and started including a lot more real food instead of fruit jellies and gels. A lot more real food.
For sure, when you're doing long distances like that, gels can save you for a few hours. But that's not really what you should rely on to get through a whole night. Otherwise, you're going to have stomach problems. That's already clear. And then, it's not necessarily advice. You also have to combine the desire to eat with the pleasure you get from what you're eating. Preparing it yourself is also really good.
And then eat what you feel like, because it's funny, during a race you crave things you don't usually eat. Like I told you, I wanted to eat cod liver, and I never eat that. I even called my micronutritionist and said to him, can I eat this, a whole can? Because I know you're not supposed to eat too much of it. He told me, no, go ahead, eat. I asked him, can I drink the oil? He said, well, go for it. I was craving fat. He told me, listen to your body and eat what you feel like, even if it seems completely crazy to you.
I totally understand. So it's true that we have a few questions about sleep, especially how much should you sleep during a 500-kilometer race? These days, for the 500 kilometers, people have 48 hours to complete the 500 kilometers. So I would say it all depends on your average pace, your strategy, but you also have to take into account that
depends on your goal too.
Depends on your goal, exactly. What is certain is that 500 kilometers can be done within the allotted time without sleeping. Then, if your goal is really to do it in just over 36 hours, you have to factor in a stop to recharge your batteries. But after that, it's very personal. Someone also mentioned hydration during the ride. That is about water. Have you ever found yourself running out of water at night?
No, so I take two 1 liter bottles, so I'm carrying a lot of water too. Every time I stop for supplies, I fill both of them up, and I've never had a problem. There are cemeteries everywhere. Once, I even knocked on someone's door. Yes, that's right. And then once I knocked on a door, someone filled up my bottle in a little outdoor watering tap. No, you always have water. Afterwards, there were a lot of participants I talked to who told me they use purification tablets. But me, I never needed them. I always had drinking water.
So it's true that there are the tablets, and some people rely on those tablets. That way you can stop and use a water source that's not really safe. And you drop in a little tablet that lets you drink the water without having any stomach issues afterwards. So there's this option of having little tablets, just in case. Usually you can just go knock on people's doors before 10 p.m. Early in the morning, people will totally understand.
At night, you drink less because there's no sun. So already I find that you sweat less. If you manage to regulate your body temperature well with your clothing, if you're not too hot, then you sweat less. I drink less at night. I've noticed that I drink less at night, and you always have the cemetery, actually. And you
Had tombs.
during the late night hours. Yeah.
That's a real question. But the question really comes up more at night. Nutrition, making sure to remember to stock up. I'd say for the other things, you can almost always find a solution. But with food, you really have to plan ahead. Well, that's a lot of good advice. Thank you so much for that. It's clear that this episode will be rebroadcast on YouTube and podcast platforms. We didn't expect it to be such a success. So there were people who couldn't join this webinar because it was limited to 50 participants. So next time, we'll make sure to allow as many people as possible so no one is blocked by the 50-person limit. That will be changed for next time. In any case, a big thank you for your availability. A big thank you for your time and for sharing your experience, Lee. I think many people have you're welcome, taken notes, and we'll see you next week with another guest who will also have a lot of experience. You'll see he'll share tips and advice with us. In any case, a big thank you for your trust. A big thank you for your enthusiasm for this series. And for this upcoming year, 2026, all of us on the team are looking forward to seeing you at the various starting lines, whether it's in Portugal in 2 months or in Spain in 9 months. In any case, we're excited to kick off this year, 2026. And with this new format, this new weekly webinar series, we'll be sharing as much advice as possible with our community. And above all, if you regularly train indoors, subscribe to the Zwift Racecross Club. And what's more, with Discord, you can talk to each other while riding. So there are rides in Europe on Zwift, but also with our friends in Quebec, since there's a 6-hour time difference. So there are also rides that are scheduled. A big thank you to you. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best and good luck with your training. See you soon. Thank you.
With pleasure. Have a good evening.